What's good, family? It's your girl, Political Lil, and welcome back to the BWISE PoliSports podcast, where we bring clarity to the chaos and receipts to the rhetoric. Today, we're diving into episode 3 of our mini-series, WNBA, Legalized Theft, Delayed Equity, and the Fight for Reparations. And in this one, we're pulling back the curtain on the financial chokehold that's been quietly shaping the league from day one. Let's talk about it. We've been told that the WNBA is finally growing. Record-breaking viewership, viral moments, booming merch sales, and even a brand new $2.2 billion broadcast deal. But let me ask you this. Where is that money going? Who actually owns the league? Who's really benefiting from the blood, sweat, and brilliance of these athletes? Because behind all the PR hype and polished press releases lies a brutal truth. The WNBA was never built for equity. It was built to serve NBA owners. And the women, especially the black women who carried this league through the decades of disrespect, they're still fighting for basic dignity. Let me break it down. From the media exposure to ownership rights, marketing control to broadcast deals, the NBA is still a puppet master, pulling the strings while the WNBA players dance for crumbs. The women don't get a share of basketball-related income, what's known as VRI, like the men do. That means they're locked out of billions while contributing to the same product pipeline. Now, NIL deals today are a tale of two systems. White-collar stars raking in millions, while black legends who paved the way were ignored or erased. Digital likeness are being used in commercials, video games, and highlight reels with no royalties paid to the very women featured. That's not just exposure, that's theft. And as the league valuation goes up, so does the lie, because visibility without equity is just another form of exploitation. So when you hear folks say, women's sports are finally getting their moment, we have to ask, which women? And whose moment is it, really? Because right now, the people cashing the checks ain't the ones doing the labor. This isn't just about low salaries. This is about stolen labor, systemic exclusion, and illegal negligence. And in 2025, it's time we name it for what it is. Modern-day exploitation disguised as opportunity. So if the system is broken by design, what would justice look like? What would reparations mean in this context? And who's ready to fight for it? Let's get into it. Coming up, segment 1, the $2.2 billion deal, and the players are still broke. We'll break down media rights, the illusion of progress, and the real math behind the WNBA's suppressed value. Stay with us, this one's gonna cut deep. What's up, family? It's your girl, Political Lil, back on the mic for another episode of BWISE PoliSports podcast, where we dig deep into the power plays behind the playbook. Today's episode, the business of exploitation. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. Women basketball is making headlines, but behind the scenes, the money, the media, and the message are still being controlled. And black women are being locked out of the wealth they helped create. Now let's be clear. The NBA still has a stranglehold on the WNBA media exposure, ownership rights, and financial structure. This isn't collaboration, it's control. We're witnessing a new era of NIL riches, but ask yourself, where were the $1 million deals when black women were dominating the game before the cameras finally showed up? Media invisibility is still policy. Black excellence is being sidelined, while white mediocrity is center stage. Players' likeness are used in video games, promos, and commercials, all without proper compensation or royalties. That's free labor in digital form. And don't be fooled by flashy valuation and TV deals, because growth without redistribution is just PR. This ain't equity, it's exploitation with a new fresh coat of paint. We keep hearing that women's sports are growing. Who's cashing the check? Now let's take a closer look at how the business of women's sports is built on systemic exploitation. And what is it going to take to tear up that playbook? Let's talk about the big numbers flashing across the headlines this year. You know, the $2.2 billion media deal. That's the value of the WNBA's new media rights deal inked in 2024. It's a multi-year, multi-network agreement with ESPN, Warner Brothers, Discovery, and Prime Video. On paper, it's a monumental move for women's sports, one that signals arrival, respect, and growth. But when you follow the money trail, the glitter starts to fade. Because for the WNBA players who built this value, there's still no equity in sight. Here's what you need to know. In the NBA, players receive 50% of basketball-related income. This includes revenues from media deals, ticket sales, licensing, and sponsorship. It's a revenue-sharing model born out of a collective bargaining and union power. But the WNBA, they don't get BRI at all. There's no BRI audit, no revenue transparency, no proportional slice of the pie. So how is it that the WNBA valuations have skyrocketed, touted in boardrooms, brand decks, and investment calls, yet the labor force behind the value still can't afford off-season rest? Why are elite athletes playing year-round just to survive? This is not just a pay gap, it's legalized exploitation embedded in a system where the NBA maintains financial and structural control over the WNBA. And in that system, growth without redistribution is not progress. It's actually theft. Sound familiar? It should, because this mirrors the sharecropping dynamics of post-slavery America, where black labor created wealth for white landowners, but received crumbs or debt in return. In the same way, WNBA athletes, over 80% of them whom are black, fuel the league's culture and financial growth, but the profits are hoarded at the top. And here's the kicker. There's no clear path to revenue transparency, no third-party oversight, and no systems of royalties for players whose likeness are now embedded in video games, commercials, and cross-platform promos. The 2024 media deal may look like progress, but it's a profit structure with plantation politics baked in. And yet, while checks get signed in the boardrooms, branding happening on the court, but who's getting branded and who's getting buried? Let's talk about how race, visibility, and NIL are reshaping who gets to lead the business of women's sport. Now that we've unpacked the numbers behind the scenes, let's turn our attention to branding, the face of the league, the players who get the shine and those who get shaded. The world of name, image, and likeness, NIL deals, is supposed to be a new frontier, a way for athletes to claim their worth beyond just salaries. But here's the reality. The top NIL earners in women's sports are overwhelmingly white. It's not just a coincidence. It's a reflection of systemic racial bias baked into a marketing machine. Take Caitlin Clark, for example. She's everywhere on billboards, commercials, viral highlights. She became the poster child of college basketball's new NIL era, with millions flowing her way. Meanwhile, Angel Reese, a dominant black player with record-breaking performances, a college championship, numerous accolades, and cultural clout, often face disproportionate scrutiny. Coded critiques question her attitude, her style, her marketability in ways her white peers rarely experience. This NIL disparity has followed these high-profile college players right into the pros. This isn't new. Black women legends like Tina Thomas and Teresa Weatherspoon, who helped build the WNBA from the ground up, never got this kind of visibility or branding. Their images were plastered across jerseys and major ad campaigns. Their legacy lives largely in the shadows, overshadowed by white narratives and marketing choices that favor palatable faces over authentic representation. Even more troubling, brands and media often co-opt black culture and style. The very aesthetics that fuel fan passion without centering black creators and athletes in their stories or profit sharing. And the data backs this up. According to On3's NIL valuation reports, white female athletes dominate the top earning list. Media coverage analysis shows a similar trend. More airtime, more jersey sales, more endorsements going to non-black athletes. So here's the question. If brand is currency, where are the receipts for the work of black women who built this league? All right, We've talked about who gets the shine. Now let's talk about who's getting paid for the shine. WNBA players aren't just athletes. They're the living brand behind every commercial, every highlight reel, and every jersey sold. But here's the catch. Most of that labor is unpaid beyond their salaries. Take video games, for example. WNBA stars appear in the NBA Live and the NBA 2K franchises. Those are games that rake in millions every year. But unlike NBA players, WNBA athletes get zero royalties or residuals for those sales. Their likeness, moves, and style are packaged and sold, but the players don't see a dime beyond the league contract. Then there are commercials, many airing during the NBA and WNBA joint broadcasts that feature WNBA athletes as the face of product. Again, this is free labor. No licensing fees, no extra check. These promos boost the league's visibility in NBA's bottom line, but not the women's in the ad. And don't forget the jerseys. Global sales of WNBA jerseys have hit new heights thanks to the growing fan base and better marketing. But the cut players receive on merch is a tiny fraction. Nike and fanatics reap most of the profits, and the players are left without meaningful royalties. At the heart of this is exploitation of likeness and cultural aesthetics. The unique style, energy, and culture these players bring is the engine of fan engagement, and yet it's still largely uncompensated labor. That's why ownership is the only true path to equity. But even ownership models are being co-opted, controlled, or coalescing into existing power structure, meaning the fight is far from over. Next, we're going to talk about the emerging player-led efforts to reclaim power and what it might look like in the future. Now, before we get caught up in the back and forth over contracts and negotiations, let's pull the lens back for a second. Because what we're talking about here isn't just a pay gap, it's economic discrimination. And when you trace that through the WNBA history, you see a pattern of legalized theft, one that's long overdue for reparations. Economic discrimination is a systemic denial of fair pay, resources, and opportunities to a group based on identity, in this case, gender and race. In the WNBA, it operates through structural inequities built into the league's economic design, unequal revenue sharing, limited sponsorship visibility, and a corporate ecosystem that treats women basketball players as a cost center rather than a growth asset. When players are paid a fraction of league revenues compared to their NBA counterparts, despite comparable labor, risk, and market value, that's not just a business decision. That's economic discrimination disguised as budget management. The WNBA reparations mandate speaks to this historical imbalance. Reparations in this context don't mean back pay. They mean structural correction. It's about redistributing the resources that were deliberately withheld. Equal access to media exposure, endorsements, infrastructure, marketing budget, and retirement benefits. The players aren't asking for charity. They're demanding restitution for decades of undervaluation that enriched the NBA while suppressing the earning potential of these women athletes. The business of exploitation is clear. The NBA owns a majority stake in the WNBA, but restricts investment and profit sharing to maintain control, effectively creating a dependency loop where players can never catch up. Now, economic discrimination isn't confined to basketball. It's embedded across industries where women, particularly black women, are overqualified, underpaid, and strategically excluded from ownership stakes and leadership roles. From Hollywood to tech to academia, the same logic applies. Those who produce the value are systemically distant from the wealth they create. Women's sports in general mirrors this pattern. In soccer, gymnastics, and track and field, revenue disparities persist even when women outperform men in global visibility and success. The WNBA is simply the most visible example of a broader economic system built to hoard profits at the top. Legally, remedies for economic discrimination exist, but they're limited. Title VII in the Equal Pay Act addresses pay inequities. but they struggle to capture systemic discrimination embedded in ownership structures or collective bargaining frameworks. That's why the fight for the WNBA reparations is so radical. It's pushing beyond existing law, demanding policy, innovation that recognize structural economic theft. Potential remedies include revising the league's ownership model to allow players equity shares, implementing revenue-based salary floors tied to media and licensing income, and requiring transparency in reporting of financial data in the collective bargaining agreement. At its core, the WNBA fight is America's unfinished business, dismantling an economic model that rewards exploitation while hiding behind market logic. Economic discrimination is the invisible hand that's been choking women's sports for decades. Reparations, financial, structural, and cultural aren't just overdue. They're the only path towards justice and sustainable growth. Now, we've talked about the exploitation, the invisibility, and the unpaid labor. Now let's talk about hope, about players taking back control and building something new. Enter the Unrivaled League, co-founded by WNBA stars Nafia Collier and Breanna Stewart. This isn't just another women's basketball league. It's a player-profit, player-owned model, sharing model, designed to put athletes in the driver's seat. It's a direct challenge to the old guard, built for the fans and players, not just the owners. But here's the thing, this fight for ownership control isn't new. WNBA pioneers, Athletes Unlimited, showed us a glimpse of what athletic-driven sports could look like. And way back in 2003, WNBA players were already organizing, even talking about strike, demanding fair salaries and respect. The fight has been long and it's far from over. The big question is now, will these new player-owned models be allowed to grow and flourish? Or will they be swallowed up, bought out, or otherwise co-opted by the same NBA power structure that has controlled the WNBA since day one? There's a vision rising, one where black fan bases are centered, players have real stakes in the business, and the game is more than just entertainment. It's community, culture, and economic justice. As we look ahead, we need to ask ourselves, if women's sports are finally having their moment, who's owning the moment? And who's still owned? Because true progress means changing who holds the power, not who just gets the spotlight. Stay tuned for our next episode where we dig even deeper into contracts, opt-outs, and the real protests on the court. If women's sports are finally having their moment in the spotlight, then we must ask ourselves who's owning that moment. And just as important, are the athletes still owned? Because you can't celebrate progress without reckoning the power structures that built this game. You can't cheer on growth without demanding justice. And you sure as hell can't applaud visibility without fighting for ownership. That kind of translates into real economic equity and respect. Today we unpacked a brutal truth. The WNBA's rise is shadowed by systemic exploitation, media erasure, and a financial system that still leaves black women on the margin. But we also saw a glimpse of hope. Players taking back power, breaking new ground, and demanding a future that belongs to them. This fight for reparations and for ownership, for respect, far from over, and it needs all of us. Thank you for riding with us through this episode of BWISE PoliSports podcast. If this conversation moved you, challenged you, or ignited a fire, don't sit on it. Here's how you can step up and stay connected. Share this episode with your network. Let's build PoliSports Nation together. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss a beat. Submit your commentary, questions, and voices. This is a community-led movement. Head on over to www.respecthergame.online and sign up for the PoliSports Nation newsletter. Download the Respect Her Game campaign toolkit, your playbook for advocacy and action. Up next is the final episode of the mini-series, WNBA, Legalized Theft, Delayed Equity, and the Fight for Reparations. This is episode 4, Strike, Sue, or Seize Power. What can players do? And what should they do now? This ain't about fair play. This is about forcing a system built on exclusion to finally pay up. We're going deeper with exposed contracts and explain why player opt-outs are the real protests. This is where labor meets resistance, and the fight for fair contracts turns into a full-on reckoning. And remember, sports are never just about the games we play, but about the stories we tell and the systems of power in sports that we expose. This is a battle for the soul of the league, built with black labor, and it's time that we create wealth from the fruits of that labor. This has been Political Lil for BWISE PoliSports Podcast, where we don't just watch the game, we change it. And remember, silence has never protected us. We either mobilize or keep watching our black players be monetized. So stay tuned, talk soon, and we out.